Well, technology is everywhere. It is with us during the day. It's also with us during the night, and it goes to bed with us. This is something, by the way, that Michael Saylor, who's one of my favorite sort of futurists and technology gurus, and very big in the Bitcoin space, but that's another story. He spoke about this. He said, listen, the reason that I bought Apple stock way back when is because I realized people are going to take their phones to bed with them. We're never separated from technology. And we're definitely not separated even when we sleep because people, Catherine, are using these sleep trackers habitually, whether it's a ring or it's a bracelet or it's this or it's that. You can't get away from technology even when you're supposed to be, well, asleep and dreaming. And you'd say, well, now I'm definitely not connected to tech. Well, yeah, you are, because everybody's getting addicted now to measuring their sleep. But I don't know how accurate it is. We should look into this. What do you think?
Well, I can tell you it's not as accurate as people think it is because, as a matter of fact, when I went for my sleep study and to see my sleep doctor for sleep apnea, and they do this at Mayo Clinic and they do this whole incredible program with you. And I said, well, my sleep tracker is saying that I'm really not getting enough deep sleep and I'm not, falling asleep fast enough. And she said, don't pay attention to that. Pay more attention to how you feel. As a matter of fact, do not even wear your watch to bed anymore because you start relying on that. And it's not 100%. It's a tool in the toolbox to look at perhaps trends and the big picture. But really, what you should be looking at is how your body feels.
Right. And I think, by the way, that's an incredibly important point because the way we feel literally is on the chopping block. I think people are literally, and I'll tell you this as a psychiatrist, they're literally substituting what they see as data and graphs from, say, a sleep tracker or whatever else, or the ring, the bracelet, the number of steps. We're getting so much data in that I think people are literally not paying attention anymore to how they feel and judging intuitively by what they're sensing from their bodies. Listen, you used to go to the doctor when you didn't feel good. This
Hmm.
idea that you're supposed to go and get a sleep study or go and get your blood pressure checked or go and get your pulse looked at or your heart because your ring told you, that's fine, I guess, kind of, sort of, but not if it short circuits your intuition and sense of self. And I think that's what's happening. I think it's happening with sleep in a very real way as people, they kind of brag about it too, which is interesting. They'll be like, yeah, last night I was in REM sleep for this long and deep sleep. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I just don't know whether that means that you're well rested. I don't know if it tells us anything about what you were dreaming about. I'm certain it tells us nothing about you as a person, which is deeply important to me. And so, uh, listen, one of the reasons we came up with Four Great Sleep, the supplement, the number four Great Sleep at fourgreatsleep.com, is because it works. You wake up refreshed, you go to sleep faster, you sleep more deeply. Great. If your ring says otherwise, I'd kind of go with whether you have energy the next day and whether you feel as if you've slept deeply and your mood is perhaps better because you have, rather than saying, well, the graph says, okay, well, that's nice, but that's not definitive. And I don't know that I would necessarily be taking, it's fine. You want to bring the record from your sleep tracking device to your doc. That's fine. But if you're sleeping through the appointment, that should tell your doctor something too.
Absolutely. And, it's these watches anyway. I don't know about the rings, but the watches in particular, they work along what's called an accelerometer. So it just measures your movement and it measures it based on three different, they call them axes. And so it gives you a sense of how much you're moving during the night. It doesn't necessarily tell you how much you're sleeping per se. Maybe you're in deep REM sleep and you're still moving a lot. So again, it's a tool that maybe you can look at trends over time. But like you said, How do you actually feel when you wake up? Do you feel like you're rested? Are you still super groggy? Are you not able to wake up in the morning? Are you looking at the clock because you're still awake at 12 o'clock at night, but then in the morning you feel rested? That to me is what is important. Do you have enough energy the next day to go for your run or do your bike ride or go to work and perform well? Take your kids to school. Those are all the things that to me are very important.
Uh, yes, and I think there's some rudimentary things. Like I hate to get coarse about this in terms of like not being as granular with the detail. I know like everybody loves data now. We're like addicted to data. We're drowning in data, and yet knowledge, true knowledge and insight and wisdom seems to be being thrown out the window. I know people know what I'm talking about, by the way. They're
Yeah.
burying us in technology and data and AI. AI, it might be an oxymoron. Artificial intelligence might not be very intelligent, right, for us as a species, because it may or may not destroy the species. But in any case, back to sleep. You might just like the idea of going to sleep 30 or 60 minutes earlier and see how you feel doing that to test it. Your ring you ring, your watch, you said watch, I said ring, your bracelet, whatever it is, may or may not tell you that. It may or may not back up what you're experiencing. Maybe it will. Listen, it's fine. If this helps people, I'm all for it. However, it's not the path that we've taken. We've taken the path of creating a supplement that we know promotes deeper sleep for great sleep. It's the number 4 great sleep at 4greatsleep.com. And we know that people tell us they feel more rested, more energized the next day, and that they feel as if they've slept more deeply. Well, probably because they have. But I think that it's notable that even when people are asleep, we love our devices. We love our device. We can't seem to separate from the electronics and the technology. And I think it's a coming storm if the storm hasn't already arrived. I think we're really being, ripped from our intuition, ripped from the knowledge of the body.
Well, you say ripped from our intuition. I think it's a really good point because, when you think about it, when you rely on a watch or you rely on technology to put you to sleep or to tell you how well you slept, technology to put you to sleep may be useful as well, but to tell you how well you slept, it's got its issues. But what about your own intuition that says, I'm going to track everything. I'm going to write it down because and I know, and I'm sure many of our listeners know that when you write something down, as opposed to reading it on a screen, it actually works better for you than technology would because you're telling yourself, I'm going to go to bed at a certain time. You write it down. Did I go to bed at a certain time? Yes. Do I feel better? Do I feel good this morning? Yes. Well, what did I do yesterday that made me feel like I slept better? And all those little things, no caffeine, we've talked about them, no light in the room, no TV 30 minutes before you go to bed, no phones in the bed, talking about technology. And so when you start being more intuitive and thinking about your own body as opposed to something extraneous to it, I think you actually learn more about yourself and then you're able to really track how you're doing.
I think you're right. This is not like a blood test, these devices, right? It would be kind of weird if you had blood tests come back showing you're profoundly dehydrated and you refuse to believe it. And you say, no, 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 I'm very well hydrated. Well, then, okay, we got to call you delusional or something, or just misinformed. But this isn't like that. And I think it's really interesting that it purports to be. So you get a reading about your health from a digital device and people treat it like, well, that's my blood test. And they get confused. They're like, well, this is weird. I'm so exhausted. And yet I slept really well because it says so on my watch. Well, no, you didn't. Right. But because these are quasi medical, they feel medical, right? People take it to be gospel. So they feel like, well, I had my EKG, right? And my heart's beating the right way, period. Well, okay, yeah, this isn't an EKG. This is a device that's a consumer device. They can work. They but it's a factor. It's something to consider. It's one variable. It's not all powerful, and you certainly should not dismiss anybody listening or watching. You should not dismiss your internal knowledge, your wisdom, your intuition about your body because a device is saying, no, you didn't toss and turn, so you're all good. Well, I'm not good. I'm falling asleep here.
Yeah, well, Dr. Evans, there's other devices besides the watch and the rings that are supposed to help people sleep better, right? There's different kinds of frequencies. There's things that I think science is still trying to get a handle on. And I think some of them do work, and I think some of them don't work. As a matter of fact, my husband has tried several because he wanted to see whether or not this is my husband. He's so analytical and he's so numbers driven. He wanted to see whether 4 Great Sleep worked better than this device that he purchased because he thought he would rather just wear this little thing around his neck than to take a supplement every day. And of course, as a good wife, I'm not going to argue with him and say, I know it's not going to work, but go ahead and try it. And so he did. And what he found was it didn't work. It worked for a few days, and then it's almost like his body got used to it and it stopped working. He started the 4 Great Sleep again, and he's getting consistent sleep. And I try to explain to him and also some of our customers when they call in, what is so good about 4 Great Sleep? Well, one, it's the ashwagandha, right? Because the ashwagandha is going to relax you. So that's a huge part. Melatonin is another huge part of our supplement, and magnesium. Those 3 alone can help your sleep, but then we combine other herbs with it in the amounts that will last through the night, right? So they're not going to run out in the middle of the night. And it does help people sleep better. It's not just this, willy-nilly formula that somebody put together. We evaluated this to make sure that it had the right ingredients in it. And that's why people are getting great sleep with it.
That's right. And it has no digital inclusion. It doesn't have a little screen that you swallow. And if it doesn't work for you, return it. It's guaranteed, money back guarantee. We would never say, well, you did sleep. Well, no, I didn't. We believe you will with 4 Great Sleep. But in any case, what are we talking about? We're talking here about sleep. We're talking also about the soul. We're talking about listening to your body and having intuition about what's happening with your body. And we're doing it on Feel Amazing Daily, as we always do. And we'll be right back. Well, we're back. Dr. Catherine Munoz and myself, Dr. Keith Abla, with Feel Amazing Daily. We're talking sleep. We're talking about the supplement that called 4 Great Sleep, the number 4 Great Sleep at 4greatsleep.com. But we're also talking about the fact that you got to go with your gut. You got to really assess, how is your energy? How is your focus? Have you slept well enough at night? Do you feel rested? Those are your variables to judge from, even as people will tell you, no, put on this ring, put on this bracelet, put on this watch, and it will give you a reading as to whether you're sleeping well or not. And there are a million of these things, by the way, all different devices. But devices are ending up owning our lives, owning our daytime hours, owning our sleep hours. And I'm really worried about that. I don't want to be like a Luddite, right? And be a throwback guy who's like, get rid of all your technology. We're coming to you via technology after all. However, I think it can be overdone. I really do. And I think particularly in the sleep space, we came up with a series of ingredients that we embraced that are all natural. They come from nature. This is in stark contrast to, lithium crystals or other circuitry, not, that would purport to be able to run your sleep for you. Nothing will run your sleep for you. Instituting good sleep hygiene will do that. You keep the room dark, you keep it a little cool, you make sure you're in bed at a reasonable time. These things all matter. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a bracelet or a wristband, a ring, and a necklace, and you're going to sleep too late after looking at blue light on your screen and worrying because you didn't write anything down about what you got to do the next day, and you're trying to keep it in your head. You're not going to sleep. I don't care how many devices you bought.
Exactly. You talked about temperature a little bit. So it's important to know that the temperature in your bedroom does need to be cooler than normal, but I didn't know this until I was doing some research this week. And I did not realize that in older adults, they need to have a little bit of a warmer room as opposed to younger adults. And younger adults, it's around 60. I don't know. People say different things. So it's somewhere between 60 and 67. Some people say 64 exactly or 65, but that range seems to be what most people say. But if you're older, you might want to bump it up a little bit to 68 to 77. I don't know why. They didn't explain why. They just said that older adults might need to have a higher optimal range. So that's something to keep in mind, but you don't want your room like a sauna, right? You don't want it to be like you're living in Tucson where I live over the summer. And the
Absolutely.
other thing is, yeah, we've talked about blue light already. We've talked about how it suppresses melatonin. So getting rid of the phones and the screens and the TVs from the bedrooms can help. But one thing also that some of the research has shown is that if you declutter your room, because for some reason a cluttered room seems to make people sleep less well. And so declutter it, take the things out that you don't need at night when you go to bed and maybe put them in your closet or put them in your bathroom so that it's a restful place and it's a peaceful place for you to actually fall asleep.
I think that totally makes sense. But again, these are things of the mind, which are very close to my heart. So, why would a cluttered room be less peaceful once you're asleep than a room that's neat as a pin? Well, we'd have to do a lot of studies to figure that out, but it relates to being human. It relates to being able to sense your environment around
Mm,
you. And it's not going to be disclosed. I mean, you could do one of these EEGs that records brain waves. It will or will not tell you whether having a neat room is going to help you sleep. It might document that. But the bottom line is, as we've been saying right along, the real evidence of whether you've slept well is how do you feel? Are you irritable? Are you depressed? Are you energized, not irritable, feeling, pretty much at equilibrium? I think for great sleep so far, what we're hearing back is not on the edge. It's tremendously positive that people who go to 4greatsleep.com, the number 4greatsleep.com, and use 4Great Sleep to supplement, it's all natural. It's manufactured in the United States, so you can trust it. And they're getting deep sleep, waking up energized. And I'm not surprised because of the natural source of the ingredients. And these are things that grow rather than things that are manufactured in a factory like a device. I'm getting a little suspicious of devices. I know I sound a little bit paranoid here, but I'm a little suspicious about the degree to which we're relying on devices. I sound like a curmudgeon because I am.
I'm the same way these days. I actually stopped wearing my Apple Watch. I now just have gone back to my old school watch because it's tracking everything you do. We're relying on it to track everything you do. And our phone buzzes and then the wrist buzzes and you're distracted from what you're doing. If it's paying attention to somebody when they're talking or, whatever you're doing, you stop to look at that and say, oh, like if it's more important than the person in front of you. And as a psychiatrist for so many years, I'm sure you can attest that that's not a good thing. You want to be paying attention to the person that's in front of you. I'm sorry, Dr. Abel, but before I hand it back over to you, there's one thing that you talked about with For Great Sleep, and you mentioned that it's fully refundable, 100% refundable. It reminded me of a story that I just heard last week from a friend of mine who wanted to buy one of these new GLP-1 medications off of a site on the internet. It's supposed to be one of the top sites, but she was very concerned. So she said, look at this. Can you tell me if it's going to be good? And I said, you got to call them because it says it's a money back guarantee. It doesn't say 100% money back guarantee. We do 100% money back guarantee, no questions asked. Well, this site, when she got to talking to them, she asked, if I don't have any weight loss, do I get my money back? And then she asked, how much weight loss? And they said, well, you have to lose some weight. And she said, well, how much? If I lose a pound, do I get my money back? Because that's not substantial. And the guy was like, well, no, because you lost weight.
Ah,
That is
well,
not
there you
that is
go.
not meaningful. But if you get a meaningful change in your sleep, right? And you feel that, you're probably not going to want a refund. But even if you feel like, yeah, it's not really working really great for me, we're still going to refund your money. We're not going to tell you, you got 7 hours and not 7 hours and 1 minute. So we're, we're not going to refund. We're going to refund it no matter what. But people have to watch out for these kinds of things in supplements as well, because people don't test them. We test ours. We're NSF certified. We also, have the verification from an FDA registered facility, and those are very important.
Well, absolutely. So, listen, my main preoccupation these days, one of my main preoccupations is not giving up yourself to technology. And again, I don't want to go on the warpath and, have every device manufacturer in the world, coming to my door saying we really are wonderful. Maybe some of them are wonderful. I'm sure some of them are wonderful, but that's not my point. My point is to be discerning, to use the wisdom of the body. And, but this has always been the case, by the way. I always tell people, when you go to a doctor and you get tests done, your final arbiter has to be your intuition and whether you're having signs and symptoms. It's
Mhm.
not whether they say, well, we did this test and it shows you're fine. Well, yeah, I'm not fine. And these days, by the way, you have to be more and more an advocate for yourself, despite whether someone wants to sell you a $200 or $400 device that's going to tell you what you should think and feel. And it does, because if you get that feedback, you may say, well, everything's good. Well, testing shows like, well, the devices may or may not be entirely accurate. And so really, you got to determine what's really happening for me. How do I really feel? And I can't tell you the number of stories of people in the realm of sleep, in the realm of a million different illnesses, who had to really, really advocate for themselves to get to the bottom of what was going on and take the right path in order to restore their well-being.
But Dr. Adler, as a life coach now and as a psychiatrist for so long, I'm 100% sure an excellent one. You've been so famous. But what are some
Oh,
of the
that's nice of you.
tips that what are some of the tips that you give people? Human tips, not device tips, not AI tips, that would help them calm their mind before they go to bed and get better sleep.
Well, human tips are here's one, which is once you've decided to go to sleep, you're off the clock. You should really tell yourself, okay, I can let everything go. Everything. This is my me time. Once the lights go out, this is why some people, by the way, even people who struggle with depression, that some people prefer it at night. Why? The world kind of goes to sleep. Darkness is a blanket for you. And you can kind of say, okay, like I can take this time. You really can take this time. And I hope people will be able to remind themselves of that because it helps to take your own counsel and kind of get outside yourself and say, listen, we're going to go to sleep now. We don't have to worry about a thing until the morning. Not easy to do always, but it can be very helpful to decide that that's the path you're going to take.
That's very true. When you said about a blanket, I was thinking, when I sleep, I put the blanket over my eyes because it's a lot darker. But it's
Well,
sort of the
that's
same
very
same
strange. No,
thing.
just kidding. Yeah,
It is strange.
no, it's not. It's actually lovely. And if you people should be doing what works for them. That's basically what we're telling them, by the way. What we've told them this whole time, I think, during this show is, you know, if you're sleeping well deep inside yourself, whether you're getting the necessary sleep because you know how you feel the next day. We believe 4greatsleep.com is a site where you can get, well, the supplement that we offer for the number 4 great sleep. We think that'll help. You'll be the final judge of that, nobody else. And we invite you, as always, to visit the site, feelamazingdaily.com. We have tons of information, tons of healthy guidance and advice about natural ways to heal yourself and feel better. And as Catherine and I always like to say, we hope you will feel amazing every single day.